We are back with On the Road of Recovery with Reggie from Athens. How are you doing today?
It's a great day. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and joining us. Could you start off by describing your childhood?
Well, my father was alcoholic. He was never diagnosed, but he died of cirrhosis of the liver when I was 6. He was a very young man of 30.
Yeah.
And I didn't know much about all this then, but it's informative to me now that I know a bit about the genetics and about the hereditary risk and all of that. Well, I think, first of all, that I was an alcoholic waiting to happen.
Okay.
I was a substance use disorder waiting to happen. Before I ever took the first drink or used the first drug, I felt way different from everybody else, and I had some what I recognize now as tendencies toward depression. And what I did then, I found ways to escape. Before I found alcohol and other drugs, I found ways to escape that. So I've been an escapist for a long time. But the alcohol and other drug use actually started socially for me. The first mind-altering substance that I got into was marijuana.
Okay.
That's really before drinking much at all. I recall drinking a little bit here and there, but early on it was marijuana, and then hallucinogens. And I was at that point 15, maybe 16 years old. It was like love at first sight. It was like something clicked into place. First time I got high, first time I dropped acid, the first time I used downers. It felt like something clicked into place that had been missing. I went from being introduced to marijuana to getting with a group that's what we did. We smoked all day. We got more scientific about ways to get the maximum effect out of it. So we were doing one-hit bongs and shotguns and all of that, where you get a really concentrated column of smoke. We were looking for better and better, more potent strains, because it was not about the experience, it was about the effect.
Right.
And with alcohol, once I started getting into it, it quickly became, well, the wine is okay, but 151 rum is better because of the higher potency. I was always seeking that effect. Worse, I think, the worst of it was at home, because again, I'm that oldest, I'm that typical oldest child, and with my father having died early, I was really focused on being there for my brothers and my sister, and helping my mom, and I was her rock. And once I started getting undependable with my use, she started looking at me differently, and that hurt more than anything. And that got to me more than anything. But even as much as that affected me, I had my coping
Right.
inappropriate
Yes.
coping mechanism, like coping mechanism that was killing me, literally, but that's what I knew. And I was doing a lot of acid and a lot of hallucinogens at that time, so I was kind of out there, and I was at one point kind of afraid I was just going to float off the surface of the planet, or overdose. There were people in my age group, or some of my heroes, some of the rock stars that I loved and what have you, who were doing that. And so I got married to ground myself. Really, that if you ask me then, I was in love, but thinking about it now, it was okay. I need to do something to ground. So very early, I got married, and settled down with someone who herself was the child of 2 people who drank alcoholically. So you can imagine that was a marriage not made in heaven, probably the other place. And nothing against her. She's a wonderful person. She's my ex-wife now. But we started having kids. I started working, and that was going to be my life. I was going to work and raise my family. And I still used.
Gotcha.
So that was not destined to be a real successful thing.
Okay. So at what point in your life did you decide that, maybe I need some help? Or did somebody else say, hey, Maybe you need some help.
I'm glad you said it that way. My wife finally had enough,
Okay.
and she was desperate for something to happen because the progression was just monstrous with me. I eventually ended up drinking a gallon of wine a night and half a fifth of vodka on top of it, smoking all the weed I could get my hands on. I had kind of largely given up the hallucinogens. I wasn't doing so much of those, but if I could get some coke or even snorting heroin, I never used a needle, and I don't say that because I'm better than anyone else, but I was just afraid of them.
Right.
That's just not my story. But the alcohol was really the demon at that point. And I was working, but I was a mess. I worked second shift purely to accommodate my using, because I would drink all night and I would sleep until noon, or be passed out more properly until noon. And our life was just going down the tubes, and I wasn't affecting just myself. Although if you'd asked me at the time, I would have said, I'm just hurting myself. I'm not hurting anybody else. I don't, I was not a mean drunk or anything like that. All the rationalizations. And I only realized later how much I was affecting my kids and my wife at the time. But she saw it first. She saw it before I did. And I have to everlasting give her credit for that. She found someone, and I'm not sure exactly, she'd have to tell you, I'm not sure exactly how she encountered this person in Al-Anon.
Okay.
And that was the beginning of my story of recovery. She found Al-Anon, and she became a ninja Al-Anoner pretty much overnight. And she did it with so much love. I mean, we had knockdown dragouts about, I don't mean physically, but
Right.
we had arguments after argument. You got to quit this. You got to quit. And she found she found that tough love. So I started finding AA information under my dinner plate, in the bathroom where I do my best thinking, and all under my pillow, literally under my pillow, and I didn't get that very unsubtle hint. So she arranged an intervention.
Okay.
Oh, I was livid.
Yes.
I was fit to be tied. But she got an intervention was where she got some old school, well-established members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And actually one of them was a doctor. Two of them were doctors. And one of them was, and I knew one of them pretty well. And so I was even more upset that she would bring this person into my living room and tell them that I was doing all this drinking, which I thought I was hiding so well and so successfully, nobody would know about it. They did an intervention, and it was a classic intervention. It was no, you don't get a choice here. She brought in someone for my job.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to keep this job, you will go to treatment. Well, I don't know anything about treatment centers and whatever. Well, we've got that arranged for you already. Well, I don't know what I would, I need some time to prep. Your bag is packed. It was a classic intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of it. I was not really interested. I was not really interested, except that I had started to have some intimation that this was the beginning of the end. I couldn't keep doing this. I started to have some of that sick and tired of being sick and tired thing that people in the room say that's the beginning of you really making a change. I was drinking so much that I had esophageal varices. I had worn out the lining of my esophagus, and so I'd get up, and one of the first things I'd do in the afternoon when I got up is I'd puke up all this red, fresh blood that had gathered in my throat overnight. That scared me. That got my attention. And I was having, this one's always hard for me to make real for people, but I had this experience. It was, I gotta call it a spiritual experience. But I was passed out one night, and I was not having the deep sleep where you have dreams, because that much alcohol interferes with it. So I wasn't having dreams. So this was memorable to me. It was not a dream.
Mm-hmm.
It was a visitation.
Okay.
And I had a friend of mine who was dead and had died in a knife fight at a bar when alcohol was involved on both sides. He came back
Oh, wow.
and was sitting there on my bedside while I passed out and said, basically, I'm here to warn you that you don't think people know about what you're doing, but I do. And if you keep it up, you're going to be with me, and you don't want to be where I am. It was just that short and sweet. And I stood straight up in the bed like a vampire. I mean, and so things like that have started to get my attention. And I really do believe in a power greater than myself. Call it God or whatever you want to call it. And I really believe that the intervention happened at a time that was orchestrated divinely. I don't think I had a lot to, and I'll go crazy trying to figure out why me and why not someone else. There's a lot more worthy people who should be here today than me, but here I am. So the intervention, even though I fought like a wildcat, it was time. It was time, and I didn't have much more time to mess around. So Shepherd Hill Hospital, I was bound for. They had it all set up. They had my ride and everything. Like I said, my bag was packed, and here I found myself at Shepherd Hill Hospital. And I was more surprised than anyone that that's where I was.
Right. Can you talk? So what year was that you went into Shepherd Hill Hospital?
That was August 22nd of 1987. I'm celebrating 34 years.
Wow. Congratulations. That's spectacular. So can you remember what it was like, that first month of sobriety and what treatment was like for you and whatnot?
Well, treatment, first of all, I went in, they did an intake, I lied. They asked, how much are you drinking? And I said, so I lied. I reduced the amount by about half. And then it was dinner time. I got there early evening, so it was dinner time. And so I was whisked away to the cafeteria with all these people I didn't know. And they sat me I was not hungry in the least. And for me, that's a red flag. And so I'm sitting at this table with all these people I did. These are going to be your people in your cabin. They have cabins there at Shepherd Hill. And I couldn't take it. I dashed there was nowhere to run.
Right.
So I sat in a corner, literally in a corner of the room, and wept like a newborn, and just wept at what my life had become, and how did I get here from where I wanted to be, and how am I in this place I don't want to be, and I don't have any choice in it, and my family and my job, and just all that came out in a flood. And I will thank a man named Juan, who was one of the techs there, who came over, and he did me the great service of not just running up on me. He was just, I'm here. And if and when you want to say something, feel free, but I'm just here. And he just abided with me there. And when I could find words, I started talking with him, and that was one of my first experiences of someone sharing their experience, strength, and hope with me. So I thought, okay, this is his job. No, this is his life too. And he started saying some things, and I thought, that's my story. Okay, this is weird. You've been looking in my window or something. And that, I thought I was so alone. I was so unique. Nobody had ever. And that was one of my first tastes of that. So that was the beginning of treatment. And I was there for the typical 28-day program at that time. And I was there at first. It was like I had no intention of getting clean. I wanted to find out how can I drink like other people do? How can I maintain that? And it became clear to me pretty quickly that I have a disease that the only treatment that made sense for me was abstinence from mind-altering drugs. And so how do I do that? And thank goodness I got my grounding in 12 steps in that program. I got my foundation, which of course I built on after I left there. Got out of treatment and got home, and I had not paid the power bill. And so I got home and there were no lights on in the house. And by that time I had started to try to develop an understanding with that higher power, a power greater than myself. And I was starting to kind of have some fledgling prayers that I sent up and some complaints that I sent up, probably more than anything. And so I got back and it was like, okay, see, I'm trying to do the right thing, and I come home and there's no lights. There was never a guarantee that life was going to get easy or anything like that, but that I would not have to deal with it alone. So that's what I've continued to learn in my recovery. I've got rooms full of people across the world. I had the experience of going to a meeting several meetings in Taiwan.
Oh, wow.
Or you had a meeting in Chinese over here and the English meeting over here. So I've automatically got a fellowship anywhere. I don't care where I go in the world. Right. I've automatically got a fellowship of people who will go to the wall for me and don't even have to know me before that moment. I've got a sponsor who will go to the wall for me. I've got a power greater than myself who I believe looks out for me, and it loves me more than I could possibly ever love myself.
So could you talk a little bit about how you rebuilt your relationship with your kids, with your wife, with, at that point in time, with family members and whatnot?
Lots of counseling for me, lots of deep-seated issues that they came back. I thought I did something with them. I just pushed them to the side. So I had to walk the walk for a while to start to repair those things.
So could you talk a little bit about so with having children and being able to have that therapeutic experience is spectacular. Did you do much educating your children about the disease of alcoholism or anything along those lines?
Well, you're talking to an Ohio certified prevention consultant. Big plug, Health Recovery Services, Athens, Ohio, hrs.org. Okay, I'm done with the commercial. But I've been an Ohio certified prevention specialist, consultant for over 30 years. I was a year sober when I hired in at the place where I still work now. I still work for Health Recovery Services, 33 years later. And so I was, it's funny you should ask it like that, because I was studying to be a prevention specialist, to learn prevention and how to do it in classrooms and out in the community. And so if any of my kids are watching this, I'm sorry. Because they had to sit through all my presentations. They were my guinea pigs. I practiced on them.
Okay.
So if anyone knew about the effects of drugs and addiction and alcoholism and what works in prevention, they know. And they were intimately acquainted with my story because I didn't hold anything back from them. They saw it, they lived through it, so they deserved that. So I very conscientious about giving them that information. Now, and that kind of lets me know how strong the genetic predisposition is, because despite that, have my kids struggled with it? Yes. Yeah, because the genetic predisposition is so very strong. They knew, and fortunately, in most cases with my kids, they got close enough to the edge that they looked over and went, okay, I'm not going to go there because I know someone who did, and it wasn't pretty. And so most of them have figured it out for themselves. Some of them are still working on it.
Okay, well, it's their lives, and at least they know that they have a dad that they can talk to about it, and is an amazing model of what recovery is. So that's pretty special.
You're talking about me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that.
Definitely. So if you could share, what you do on a daily basis to maintain your sobriety. You are a person that just exudes this sense of peace and acceptance and just, genuine joy. Just really, that just seems to be who you are. So what do you do to be able to maintain that?
Oh my, well, I have to lean into the joy. If this were a slog, I would not keep doing it. I'm not a person who does things that aren't fun. And if they're not fun, I make them fun. Now I have my times when I look like a hermit or whatever. I still like my books and what have you. I still like my little escapist things that are non-drug related. I still love science fiction and all that, and I can escape with the best of them. But I love it that I've got this other side that I discovered. I'm a DJ in the area, Rockin' Reggie. I've been doing that for over 30 years, and I'm more known for that than anything. Lots of places you say Reggie Robinson, they go, huh? You say Rockin' Reggie. Oh, okay, that guy. Yeah. And I've had just as Rockin' Reggie. It's not just I'm not a bar DJ. I do prevention programming through that, and so I've been a part of recovery conferences. I've been a part of lots of things that fit right in with my life. I have impacted literally thousands of people with the prevention because I started off being a case manager and wanting to treat people who had substance use disorders and other behavioral health disorders, and my hat's off to people in treatment. But I discovered in the late 80s that prevention was kind of getting its footing then. And I discovered things like for every dollar you spend in treatment or in prevention, you save 11. Every dollar spent in prevention saves $11. That's someone who doesn't go to, if that person is successful, they don't go to jail. They don't need hospitalization. They don't lose their job. Their tax paying. Every dollar in prevention reaps 11. That alone. And so that became my philosophy. I want to be in prevention. I want to catch these people when they're 6 years old rather than 40 and we're trying to bring them back from the edge of the abyss. There are people out there to help you, and you don't have to do this by yourself. Don't do it by yourself. You know, I say this, recovery is kind of like sex. Technically, you could do it by yourself. What fun is that? Why would you want to? This is probably going to get edited out. But I don't know how appropriate that is. But yeah, why do it by yourself when you've got someone, you've got lots of someones who you don't even know yet. Like I said, I don't care where I go in the world. I get into a hang up, or I just want someone to hang out with. I just want some safe fellowship. You know, I don't take this for granted. I don't hang around slippery places and slippery people. So if I just want someone safe for fellowship, I know what to do. And I've got that anywhere in the world. I don't have to do this alone. So I don't. And I encourage you, if you need that help, first thing is to recognize it. And the next thing is to just avail yourself of all the help out there. It doesn't have to be a 12-step group. There's many roads to recovery. There are treatment centers. There are professionals. There are all kinds of ways. There's no wrong road. But just don't try to do it by yourself.